When the electrical grid fails, the experience can oscillate wildly between a mere annoyance and a catastrophic life safety event, depending almost entirely on the season. A power outage that strikes during the dog days of summer might be uncomfortable, leading to sweaty, sleepless nights and the potential loss of refrigerated food, but it is rarely immediately life-threatening for the average healthy individual. However, the dynamic shifts dramatically and dangerously when the grid collapses during the winter months. As the mercury drops, the loss of power transforms from an inconvenience into a survival challenge that tests the limits of modern endurance. Every hour that passes without electricity and freezing temperatures increases the severity of the situation. The ambient temperature inside a home begins to plummet, equating the indoors with the outdoors, and the comfortable sanctuary of the living room becomes a potential tomb. Many homeowners believe they are prepared because they possess a space heater, yet they fail to realize that these devices become nothing more than expensive paperweights without the massive electrical current required to operate them. Even those who believe they have secured their safety with a gas furnace and a transfer switch often face a rude awakening. While the heat source may be natural gas, the mechanism to distribute that heat, the blower fan, requires electricity, often demanding around 400 watt-hours to run. In a 24-hour period, this consumption creates a deficit of several kilowatts of energy, a demand that is simply too high for the average battery backup system or small generator to sustain for weeks on end. It is financially unrealistic for most families to invest $10,000 in massive battery banks and cover their roofs and solar panels just for emergency heating, but that does not mean one should be left helpless. We must cultivate a suite of options that require not a single watt of electricity to function, ensuring survival and comfort when the outside world freezes over. You do not necessarily need to implement every single one of these ideas, but integrating a combination of them creates a layered defense against the cold. Some of these concepts may be familiar, echoing the wisdom of previous generations, while others might be novel approaches to thermal regulation you have never considered. To organize these thoughts logically, we should begin at the most critical point of heat generation, the human body itself, and then expand outward to the immediate environment. The primary objective is to stop heat loss at the source. We must treat our bodies as the primary heater in this equation. It is reminiscent of a rhetorical question parents often ask children who leave the door ajar. Were you born in a barn? The house is the barn, but the body is the engine. We are biological furnaces, constantly generating thermal energy, and our first priority must be to trap that energy before it dissipates into the surrounding air. Insulation is the key. The most vulnerable points for heat loss are the extremities, specifically the hands and feet. When the body detects a drop in core temperature, it naturally constricts blood flow to these outer areas to preserve vital organs, making hands and feet the first to suffer from frostbite and numbness. Without the dexterity of your hands and the mobility of your feet, performing other survival tasks becomes exponentially more difficult. Therefore, investing in high-quality wool socks, particularly merino wool, is essential. Unlike cotton, which loses its insulating properties when wet, wool retains heat even if it becomes damp from sweat. Beyond simple fabric, modern technology offers battery-powered heated socks and gloves, as well as chemical hand warmers, which can provide a critical influx of heat to these extremities. Moving upward from the extremities, the head and neck area represent another massive avenue for heat loss. The blood vessels in the scalp and neck are close to the surface, and leaving them exposed is akin to leaving a radiator valve wide open. Neck gaiters, scarves, and insulated hats, often affectionately referred to as Elmer Fudd hats due to their ear flaps, are non-negotiable items in a grid-gown winter scenario. By covering these areas, you essentially cap the chimney of your body heat, forcing it to recirculate rather than escape. In addition to clothing, there are technological aids available today that can supplement body heat without drawing the massive power loads of a space heater. Battery-powered heated vests and blankets, often running on small power banks capable of 10,000 milliamp hours, can provide direct warmth for hours. Recharging these small batteries requires a negligible amount of solar or generator power compared to the 1,500 watts needed for a standard resistive heater. These modern heated garments are efficient because they apply heat directly to the torso, heating the blood as it circulates, rather than trying to heat the air in an entire room. The philosophy of clothing in a survival scenario relies heavily on the art of layering. This is a concept often repeated but rarely executed with technical precision. A proper layering system consists of three distinct parts. First is the base layer, which sits directly against the skin. Its sole purpose is moisture management. This layer must be moisture wicking to pull sweat away from the body. If sweat remains on the skin, it cools rapidly, chilling the body from the inside out. Above this sits the insulation layer, typically made of fleece or wool. This layer's job is to trap dead airspace, which acts as a buffer against the cold. Finally, the outer shell serves as a wind blocker. It does not need to be heavy or thick, but it must be impervious to drafts, as moving air strips away heat through convection. Beyond clothing, one should consider the utility of mylar blankets. Often dismissed as cheap gimmicks, these reflective sheets are standard issue for emergency medical services and fire departments for a reason. While a mylar blanket cannot generate heat, it is scientifically designed to reflect up to 90% of the radiant heat your body emits back toward you. In a true emergency, using a mylar sheet inside a sleeping bag or under a standard wool blanket can significantly increase thermal retention. They are inexpensive, compact, and an absolute necessity for any emergency kit, serving multiple purposes from heat reflection to signaling. Once we have secured the personal thermal envelope, we must look at the environment we occupy. In a power outage, the notion of heating an entire home is a fool's errand. The volume of air is simply too great, and the thermal leakage through walls and windows is too rapid. Instead, we must adopt the strategy of microzoning. We must shrink our living space down to the smallest manageable area. This concept harkens back to the colonial era, where homes were significantly smaller and families often slept in a single room to share body heat. In a modern crisis, you should select a room that is central to the house, preferably one without exterior walls if possible, to act as a thermal buffer. If the room has windows, they are the weak points. You must insulate them aggressively using plastic sheeting to create a dead air gap, followed by heavy blankets or thermal curtains to block drafts. To further reduce the volume of air that requires heating, consider setting up a tent inside this designated room. A 4-person or 2-person camping tent set up on top of a bed or on the floor creates a microclimate that captures body heat incredibly effectively. If a tent is not available, one can revert to childhood instincts and construct a fort using chairs, blankets, and cushions. The physics remains the same. By reducing the volume of air around you, your body heat becomes a more effective radiator, raising the temperature inside the enclosure significantly higher than the rest of the room. If possible, choose a room with south-facing windows. During the day, even in freezing temperatures, the sun provides significant radiant energy. By opening the curtains on the south side during the day to let the solar gain warm the thermal mass of the room, and then sealing them tight at night, you can harvest free energy from the sun. Having addressed insulation and zoning, we must now evaluate methods to actively introduce heat into this reduced space. This is where misinformation often runs rampant. One of the most persistent myths in the preparedness community is the clay pot heater, which involves placing a terracotta pot over tea light candles. While this contraption may raise the temperature of a very small space by a degree or two, it is largely a placebo. The laws of thermodynamics are stubborn. A single tea light candle produces approximately 100 British thermal units, or BTUs, of heat. No amount of ceramic stacking increases that energy output. The pot merely absorbs and radiates it slowly. When you consider that a standard room heater might output 5,000 to 10,000 BTUs, the futility of relying on a few candles becomes apparent. They are better than freezing, perhaps, but they are not a survival strategy. A step up from candles, though still limited, are canned heat products like the Vesta Instafire or Sterno cans. These devices are primarily designed for cooking or keeping food warm, but they can provide a supplemental source of heat. In testing, using a product like the Vesta unit can raise the temperature of a small closed bedroom by 6 or 7 degrees. The benefit here is duality. You can boil water or cook a meal while simultaneously taking the chill off the room. However, the fuel for these units is relatively expensive compared to other options, and they are not designed for long-term area heating. They represent a middle ground, better than a candle but not a heavy hitter for a deep freeze. For serious heating without electricity, we must look to fuels with higher energy density. The most accessible and user-friendly option for indoor use is the propane heater, specifically models like the Mr. Buddy heater. These units are engineered for safety, featuring oxygen depletion sensors that shut the unit off if oxygen levels in the room drop too low, as well as tip-over switches that cut the fuel if the unit is knocked over. Propane is a clean-burning fuel, and these heaters can be run off small 1-pound canisters or adapted to run off larger 20-pound tanks, commonly used for barbecue grills. A Mr. Buddy heater can easily maintain comfortable temperature in a sealed room or a tent, transforming a miserable situation into a manageable one. They are portable, easy to ignite, and the fuel is widely available, though one must store it safely. Another viable option is the kerosene heater. Kerosene has a long history as a heating fuel because it is energy-dense and shelf-stable. Kerosene stored properly can last for 5 to 10 years, making it an excellent candidate for long-term preparedness supplies. Kerosene heaters generally output a significant amount of heat, often more than portable propane units, making them suitable for slightly larger spaces. However, they come with caveats. They produce an odor, especially upon ignition and extinguishment, and they introduce moisture into the air, which can lead to condensation issues on cold windows. Furthermore, they require ventilation. While modern units are safer, it is generally advised not to sleep while a kerosene heater is running unless someone is on fire watch. Despite these drawbacks, a 10,000 BTU kerosene heater acts as a furnace for a central room, and the fuel cost is generally lower than utilizing small propane canisters. Perhaps the most efficient and cost-effective option for heating off-grid, though it requires more technical setup, is the diesel heater. Diesel heaters have gained immense popularity in the van life and trucking communities, and for good reason. Diesel fuel is widely available and often cheaper than propane or kerosene. These units produce dry, clean heat because the combustion process takes place inside a sealed chamber, and the exhaust fumes are vented outside via a pipe. This is the critical distinction. Unlike a propane or kerosene heater that sits freely in the room, a diesel heater requires installation. You must route an exhaust pipe through a window or a wall, perhaps by creating a custom insert for a window frame using a piece of lumber with a hole drilled through it. Most diesel heaters also require a 12-volt power source to run the fuel pump and the fan, which means you need a small battery setup, but the electrical consumption is minimal compared to an electric space heater. A standard diesel heater can warm an average bedroom to uncomfortable levels of heat within minutes, forcing you to turn it down. They are powerful, efficient workhorses that, once set up, offer the best heat-to-cost ratio of any liquid fuel option. For those fortunate enough to have a fireplace or a wood-burning stove, the solution is ancient and reliable. Wood heat is exceptional because it uses a renewable resource that can be scavenged or stored in bulk. A wood-burning stove is significantly more efficient than an open fireplace. An open fireplace pulls warm air from the room and sends it up the chimney, often resulting in a net heat loss for the rest of the house. A wood stove, however, sits inside the room and radiates heat from all sides, creating a massive thermal mass that keeps the space warm long after the fire has died down. If you have a fireplace insert, it likely relies on an electric blower to circulate air, but in a grid-down situation, leaving the door slightly ajar or accepting the radiant heat without the fan is still a viable survival tactic. The prerequisite, of course, is having a sufficient stockpile of seasoned firewood. 2 cords of wood might seem like a lot until you are burning it 24 hours a day. Furthermore, chimney maintenance is critical. A flue clogged with creosote is a ticking bomb that can lead to a chimney fire, turning a survival situation into a disaster. This brings us to the most critical aspect of emergency heating: safety. The goal is to survive the cold, not to burn the house down or succumb to silent poisoning. Whenever you introduce a combustion-based heat source into an enclosed space, be it propane, kerosene, wood, or even candles, you are introducing the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide is odorless, colorless, and deadly. It is absolutely imperative to have battery-operated carbon monoxide detectors and smoke alarms in the room where you are sleeping and heating. Do not rely on the detectors hardwired into your home's electrical system, as they may not have battery backups, or those backups may fail during an extended outage. A dedicated, portable explosive gas and carbon monoxide detector is a life-saving investment. It will alert you if the oxygen levels drop or if combustion gases are accumulating to dangerous levels. Fire suppression is the second half of the safety equation. You must have fire extinguishers readily available, specifically ABC-rated extinguishers which are capable of handling wood, liquid, and electrical fires. A small kitchen extinguisher is likely insufficient for a generator fire or a kerosene spill. Having substantial, high-quality extinguishers placed strategically around the home, near the heater, in the garage, and near the kitchen is essential. In addition to extinguishers, a comprehensive first aid kit specifically stocked with burn treatments is a wise precaution. This should include burn gels, sterile dressings, and pain management medication. If the grid is down, emergency services may be overwhelmed or unable to reach you, effectively making you your own first responder. Navigating a dark, freezing house requires illumination, so headlamps and flashlights should be staged in accessible locations. Navigating a clutter of blankets and heaters in the pitch black is a recipe for knocking over a fuel source and starting a catastrophe. Furthermore, every family needs an evacuation plan. You must discuss and practice what to do if the heating method fails and starts a fire. Where is the exit? Where do you meet? Who grabs the emergency bag? Practicing these drills ensures that if panic sets in, muscle memory takes over. Safety also extends to the storage of fuels. Never store large amounts of propane, gasoline, or diesel inside the living space. These should be stored in a detached garage or a shed away from ignition sources. Understanding the volatility of your fuel is part of the preparedness mindset. Kerosene and diesel are less volatile than gasoline, making them safer to handle, but they still demand respect. Ensure that whatever heating device you choose, you are intimately familiar with its operation before the crisis hits. Trying to figure out how to prime a kerosene wick or vent a diesel heater by the light of a flashlight while your hands are shaking from the cold is a scenario to be avoided. There are other heating methods often discussed in survival circles that fall into the category of better than nothing but are not primary solutions. Alcohol stoves, such as those used by backpackers, burn very clean but produce limited heat and have short burn times. They are excellent for boiling water for a freeze-dried meal, but are impractical for heating a room because they require constant refilling, which cannot be done safely while the unit is lit. Similarly, oil lamps and paraffin lanterns provide a nostalgic and effective source of light and do emit a small amount of thermal energy. A few oil lamps burning in a small room can raise the temperature slightly, but their primary utility is illumination. Some lanterns are designed with flat tops that allow for a metal cup to be placed on them, serving a dual purpose as a cup warmer or a slow cooker. While having these items contributes to the overall versatility of your survival kit, they should not be relied upon as the primary defense against hypothermia. You must also consider the psychological and morale-boosting aspects of staying warm. The ability to cook a hot meal or make a hot drink is intrinsically linked to staying warm. Consuming hot calories raises your core body temperature from the inside. Therefore, having a method to cook indoors, such as the previously mentioned butane burners or the Vesta Instafire, serves a double function of safe indoor cooking and supplemental heating. It prevents the need to go outside into the freezing elements to operate a barbecue grill or camp stove. Staying inside, huddled in your microzone, conserving energy and maintaining high morale is a legitimate survival strategy. In summary, surviving a winter power outage requires a shift in perspective. You must stop thinking about heating the house and start thinking about heating the person. It begins with the biology of the body, insulating the skin with wool and synthetic fibers, protecting the head and neck, and shielding the hands and feet. It moves to the architecture of the home, selecting a small, defensible space, insulating it from the rest of the freezing structure, and perhaps even building a room within a room using tents or blankets. It culminates in the careful selection and safe operation of off-grid heating devices. Whether you choose the convenience of a propane buddy heater, the raw power of a diesel heater, the reliability of a wood stove, or the endurance of kerosene, the key is redundancy and practice. Do not wait for the ice storm to snap the power lines before you inspect your gear. Test your heaters, rotate your fuel, check the expiration dates on your carbon monoxide detectors, and practice your layering systems. The vulnerability of the modern power grid is a reality we cannot ignore. It is a complex, fragile machine that is susceptible to weather, age, and overload. When it breaks and the cold winds of winter begin to seep through the walls, the difference between a terrifying ordeal and a cozy, memorable campout in the living room is preparation. By understanding the physics of heat loss and having the right tools on hand, you can ensure that your family remains safe, warm, and secure, regardless of what is happening on the power lines outside. Take the time now to assess your inventory, identify the gaps in your heating plan, and acquire the necessary fuels and safety equipment. The peace of mind that comes from knowing you can withstand the freeze is the most valuable supply you can possess.